I'm going to invite our moderators. I'm not moderating this panel. This panel is going to be moderated by two of our scholars, Pretty and is it Hamish or Hamis? Hamis. If we could have Pretty and Hamis join me up on stage. Let's give them a round of applause as they come up. Lovely. And then I'm also just going to quickly introduce our panelists who will also be joining. Oh, did you? Hey. Okay. Oh, I didn't know there was a dress code. Oh, well, please grab your, I'll say two question people and then panelists. I don't know how, or you'll split yourself. Never mind, you're in charge. Allow me to introduce those who will be joining this panel. So we've got Mr. Tshepo Kgapane, who is a young dynamic product lead for Black Bullion South Africa and WaFunda. Black Bullion is an innovative digital financial education platform designed especially for youth. Now, his enthusiasm and passion for consumer financial education spans through the decades. He has his own initiative, which is called the Youth Money Circle. So this is indeed an expert. Tshepo's credentials include a BCom Law from WITS, postgraduate diploma in management, and he's currently pursuing an MBA at the University of East London in the UK. Lovely. But that's not all. Tshepo is also the charismatic voice behind the Easy Does It podcast by Easy Equities. Does anyone have the Easy Equities app? Do you use it? Yes. Oh. Okay, I have it. I'm still trying to figure it out. And the What the Crypto by Luno. And you can tune in to hear his insights on financial literacy. So let's give a round of applause to Tshepo Kgapane. Tshepo over there. And then joining Tshepo, and she's going to be coming up on stage, we have Miss Duduzile, who has a heart for service, a dynamic leader, an advocate with a deep commitment to community service and engagement. She has a master's degree in political sciences, and she's leveraged her academic background to drive positive change through her own organization called the Her Pride Foundation, where they provide education, skills development, and advocating for women's health and well-being. She was also recently, I know it's not in your bio, but recently nominated for the Top Youth-Owned Brand Awards for foundation NGOs and foundations, if I'm not mistaken. And she also sits on the Amnesty International South Africa board as a youth representative, working as a public policy and regulatory affairs officer. Can I just say, your guests today, let's give her a round of applause as she comes up on stage. She also happens to be my friend. Thanks. Yeah. Get friends who have money. All right. The panel is all yours. Please take it away.
Hello. Hello, good morning, everyone. It's that wonderful morning that we are going to have our discussion, and the topic is so hot. It's all about chelete, it's about money. Yeah, I think everyone is curious, knowing about money and everything. So let me take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Tshepo and Miss Duduzile. I think I pronounced it well. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tshepo. You can take the stage.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday, I think it is. Don't mind the energy. I'm just that type of guy. I want to say thank you so much to the prof for opening things for us, talking about machines. We're going to talk about something that's even more complex, human beings, and something that's extremely scary for a lot of us, money. So we do have the panel discussion will be the main part of this particular session, but I will tell you a bit about some of the work that we're doing at a place called Black Bullion. It's going to be very, very short, and I'll sort of just move through it. So my name is Tshepo Kgapane. I'm very passionate about financial education and helping young people to build a relationship with their money. So I work for an organization called WaFunda. WaFunda is a social enterprise. We're based in Cape Town. And what we like to do is use technology to unlock new levels of financial education and democratize access to education in general. And one of the ways that we do it is through financial literacy. So we're very passionate about it. We know that young people need to be able to build a relationship with their money, but it's complex, it's difficult. I mean, the moment you mention the word money, it can be so heavy. You know, for some, it's like, oh, not this again. For others, it's a little bit exciting. So there's different types of things. So We do it primarily through our digital financial literacy platform called Black Bullion South Africa. It is not a course. For some reason, people think about financial education and it's a course. No, money is a lifelong skill, right? So on the platform itself, it's a youth-centric platform. It's digital. It's been built to help young people develop essential money skills, prepare for the world of work, and so forth. Content on the platform itself, there's 30 modules. There's a budgeting tool, there's articles, there's interactive lessons that use multimedia. We call them pathways. It's basically got a quiz built into it, and we use a lot of gamification to try and make this topic of money much more exciting, because it can be a little bit boring and quite heavy at times. In terms of some of our users, we currently have 5,000 young people on the platform. The average age is 25, 56% of them are female, which makes me very, very happy, because we know women are starting to lead a lot of our households. And then in terms of some of the things that we picked up from users on the platform, confidence in personal financial management has increased. Users who save money regularly, that's increased by 33%. Users who manage their money by setting up a monthly budget has increased as well. And then 75% of our users cite Black Bullion as our primary source of financial knowledge. So that's just a little bit on our platform. These are some of our partners. We're hoping that the Mastercard team will bring you guys onto the platform in the coming weeks and months as well. But these are some of the individuals that we're working with. Some interesting, diverse, very different organizations. Some of them you'll actually recognize as well. So I don't want to bore you with all the details of what we do, but I do want to give you guys a little bit of a taste of some of the conversations that we have. So just for a couple of minutes, I want us to spill the tea, which means open up and share, right? What word best describes your current relationship status with money? I want you to think about it for a while. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it complicated? Is it stable? Is it critical? What is going on with your money, right? All right, so the next thing that I want you to think about is, what on earth do you need to do to improve this relationship with your money? What do you need to start doing differently? At a session yesterday, there was 500 young people. Somebody said, we need more money, Tshepo. They said, we need more money. For me, this is the most important lesson when it comes to money. Everyone's relationship with money is different, because we come from different upbringings, we come from different places, we've got different levels of education, we've got different cultures, we come from different families, we read different things. They all shape the way that we behave with money. This makes understanding money more of a psychological problem as opposed to a mathematical problem. So what I've learned is how we behave with money determines the kind of relationship that we have with money. It's got absolutely nothing to do with how smart you are. And I'll end it off with this specific quote, right? It's one of my favorite books at the moment. It's called The Psychology of Money. And in some of the topics that we're going to discuss in the panel, you will pick up on this as well. I'm going to twang and use some of my English here. A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. The opposite is also true. Ordinary people who have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with formal measures of intelligence. So what does that tell you? Building a relationship with money has nothing to do with how smart you are, and everything to do with how you behave when it comes to money. The problem, changing behavior, is very difficult. So I'll leave it at that for now. We'll jump into the panel discussion, because I think that's the most valuable part of the session, right?
Okay, thank you very much. You can have a seat. Am I audible? Oh, okay. Okay, good morning, guys, and I hope this is going to be fun. I know that money is a very personal matter, so feel free. This is a safe space, and we're going to have this fun, interactive conversation. So, Ms. Dudu, do you want to say anything before we start? Like, introduce yourself? Sure. Yes, please. Thank you.
Sanbanani Dumelani Absheni. Hello, my name is Duduzile Mabaso. Such a privilege and an honor to be here, to be speaking everything money. You know, one thing that we always grow up and we're told that it doesn't grow on trees. So I had prepared a little video, well, more like fun, a little video to really just jumpstart the conversation or part of the conversation that we're about to have. So while we wait for the tech team to, play that up, I want to know from you guys, maybe a couple of you guys, what are the type of perspectives that you hold, or what pops into your mind when you hear the term black tax? Why are we sighing? Yes, for sure. Okay, financial abuse. Just a disclaimer, right? There is no right or wrong or positive or negative perspective. Again, like it was highlighted a few moments ago, we all have different backgrounds, so it all amounts to how we see and perceive things. But thank you for that. Yes, the lady in the red there in the back.
The youth in the African context, specifically for people that come from the global south.
So it's something, it's a practice that holds back young people.
Yes.
Okay. I saw a couple of hands as well. Yes, sir.
Well, the first thing that I think about is supporting family members whenever black tax comes about. So, yeah, that's the first thing that I think about.
Thank you very much. Supporting family.
So on my side, I would say it's duty. I mean, most of our family members have sacrificed a lot for us. So for me, it is training, but it's more of a duty.
It's more of a duty.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So they need a return on investment. Yes, ma'am.
For me, it's a reflection of the inequalities that as black people we are experiencing. As much as we say it is a duty, yes, it is a duty, but we need to kind of like reflect on where we come from. And as the youth of today, we need to change that perspective of black tax so that our children do not have to suffer from that.
Sure. Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, two gentlemen.
Okay, for me, it's giving back.
It's giving back. Okay.
I have two words for this. One is humanity. The other one is negligence. Humanity meaning that maybe you're feeling empathy for the people that you know that you love. Negligence means that you're just neglecting yourself, just dying for other people,
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
In my perspective, it has been introduced in a different way. Mostly, it's more like entitlement, the way it was introduced to us, the word black tax. But I kind of view it as financial freedom, in a way.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have both. I think the first one would be it fosters a culture of dependency syndrome, and then it is also a moral responsibility. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. One last hand. Yes, sir.
I would say for me, it's a sign of how small our economies are in Africa. I think black tax is just a signal of the fact that there's a lack of economic opportunity such that you have so many homes in Africa that have one breadwinner, as opposed to like Western economies that have multiple people working within the home.
Very true. Thank you so much for indulging me. Can we turn our eyes to the screen?
Black tax can be summed up as a duty that the child has to the family. Most of the time, we find that our families give up so much to ensure that we get that degree, and once we get that job, it is payback time.
To me, the term is still foreign. I don't think, to me as an African man, I agree with the word, especially the tax. I'd rather say family responsibility.
we do grow up in communities that are far behind. Sometimes it's actually quite nice to start empowering people in our communities.
If 1, 2, 3 people are giving, through, it means the greater community is gaining. So in order to uplift our people, I'm happy to really do what I can.
Black tax has both negatives and positives. The positive thing for me is ensuring that a nephew gets the much needed education. But on the downside, it means that I personally have to make a lot of sacrifices.
So a lot of people do struggle with that, mainly because the obligation is engraved within us, like deep mentally. It has definitely gone too far, and I think it's still going too far for a number of people, mainly because of their inability to set boundaries.
At one point, I had to pay for my younger sister's tuition fee, and I didn't look at it as something that I was forced to do. I had to do it because I was not going to look at suffering in my presence while I can help. I love to be valued because of what I have done for myself and the others members of the community. I think that is wealth.
The thing is, if you're always coughing up money, you're actually not going to be able to progress because it's a lifetime commitment. Actually, I think set a budget of how much you can afford, how much you can give them, and how far you're willing to do it for. I think so, but I think it's going to take some time. And I think it's going to take us, which is the new generation coming up from like the 94s upwards, to change it.
It is definitely about breaking that cycle. We don't want to burden our children as well. We want to set them up for a great future. We want our kids to be the first generation that actually builds trust funds for their own kids.
Thank you very much. So just to jump straight into it, right? And the kids that she's talking about probably are all sitting in this room, I'd like to assume. But the context of black tax is all about a matter of perspective, because like we heard around the room, everybody has a different narrative and a perspective as to how they see what black tax amounts to, right? But essentially, black tax is a form of financial support that one sort of gives to other family, extended family, can expand to friends, not necessarily just conduce to like immediate family and so forth. But it's one of those things where in the life that we live in, like you guys have highlighted, that because of economic imbalances, because of the historic that we have as people of color, it becomes very difficult for us to not be able to, or for us rather to be able to build wealth from the generations of our parents. So the notion of black tax, right, started off as sending something back home, right? If some of you are from, Laleni or rural areas, you know that coming to Joburg was quite a big deal, right? And the notion behind that particular practice was to genuinely support the people that you left back home, because you have been able to be uplifted out of the situation that you were in back home and be able to advance more than the people that you left back home. So according to my understanding, that's how the practice of black tax started. It was more about Ubuntu more than, financial abuse like you guys are saying, or some of you guys have shared. So for a perspective of black tax, it really is started off as a notion of financial assistance to the people that you left back home, because like we said, we are standing on, it's a common thing that we like saying in society, that we are standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, right? So it came off as a personal responsibility that one assumes to be able to say, because of those that came before me, I genuinely do want to pass it forward and continue feeding into the family system, right? But because society has a very weird way of perverting a lot of things, it has turned into obligation, it has turned into financial abuse, it has turned into one of those things where we see it's being forced upon a lot of people, especially young people, right? But however, at the end of the day, it's all about what you as an individual, what perspective you hold, and above the perspective that you hold, are you willing to continue with the practice and what it means to you? Because it's very important for us to be able to redefine certain terms, practices, habits, and traditions, you know, to be able to customize them to our realities of today. So what we find is that one of the things my mom used to say to me while growing up is I used to ask why a lot, because I'm like, I genuinely do not want to do something where I don't understand the reason behind me doing it. So if I carry on a certain practice or a certain tradition, why am I carrying it on? So today, as we sit and have conversation about money, around how to redefine your relationship with money, how to work around black tax, or how to deal, at the back of your head, ask yourself, is this something that I wish to carry on? You know, in my family, in my personal life, is it something that I see value in or not? And one of the key things that I wanted to really touch on today is that it all boils down to financial planning, right? It all boils down to financial planning. Because I find out that as youth, the more we have money conversations, the more we realize that we think the more money we have, the less problems we have, right? We're like, if you can give me 5 million, 5 million will solution all the problems I have right now, without realizing that the person who said more money, more problems really wasn't lying. You know, it's like more money, more responsibilities. Like we always say, whom much is given, much is required, right? So it all boils down to your relationship with money. How do you relationship with money? Do you budget, or are you a chance taker? You know, are you the type of person that sees money in and you're like, I saw something, like me, once upon a time. I used to be like, it's money, it'll come back. And when in retrospect, it really doesn't sometimes. It really doesn't sometimes. So it all boils down to the type of relationships that we have with money, with ourselves, with our needs, and with our families as well. Because it is in that particular relationship where you're able to start structuring what your expenses looks like, what your needs are, what your wants are, what is it that you need and you can afford. You know, you then start having those conversations with yourself. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Duduzile and Brother Tshepo. I think money matters is a big topic. I'll start with me first. I'm very poor on managing my money that I'm getting, especially the stipend that I'm getting from Mastercard. Yeah, guys, because you see the money and you're like, is this enough? But it's because of poor management. So for Mr. Tshepo, I've seen that you have shared some stories of some young people that you are training. They have improved on their saving. So please, can you share with us some tips and guidelines? How do you go about to improve these young people?
Yeah, it's very difficult and tricky to build a relationship with money, but I think you need to be intentional with it. I think that's where it starts. You need to be intentional with keeping it, with growing it, with treating it like a seed, and ultimately it comes down to what Duduzile said, financial planning. So you need to have a plan for your money. You have to be intentional. A lot of these things, we know them. We know it's right to save, but we still don't do it. And I think it's because we're not intentional about our money. So when you go through the process of creating a budget, you are intentional in saying, where is my money going and why? And is the way that I'm spending money reflecting the things that are important to me? If you say you want to own your first home, is it reflected in the way that you're budgeting and spending your money? So for me, it's about being intentional.
Okay, I'm also just going to start by saying my relationship with money is quite traumatizing. I'm a chronic saver because I've been poor at some point and I don't want to go back there. So I'm just going to ask, in line with what you were saying about black tax, when most of the answers that we got around the room are very different. It shows that we're coming from different backgrounds, but then the one thing that we have in common is that in one way or another, we all experience black tax. Somebody said it's abusive, another one said moral obligation and all that, so it's all emotional. So my question to you, Ms. Dudu, is where do we draw the line in between having it as a moral obligation and something that could be abusive? And how would you advise us going into the work world on how to go about saying, no, I can't do that anymore, or going on with that?
Thank you so much for your question. I think it's very important, right? Boundaries, 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 boundaries. I'm going to say it again, boundaries. Boundaries are very important because, again, it comes down to what are my needs, right? It's a new job, probably you've moved into an apartment that has utilities. It's South Africa, electricity went up. You have to pay water, you have to pay electricity, you have to buy whatever it is that you have to buy for your space, pay rent, still commute to work. So it's all about sitting down with yourself and first and foremost being honest about your starting point, right? To say, this is the amount of money that I'm making or I'm taking back home. And from what I'm taking back home, what percentage of that constitutes to my needs, right? And from that, you then look at what's left over to be able to say, am I able to extend grace to other people and send money back home, support home, however necessary? Or I genuinely just can't, because saving is very important. You need to have an emergency fund, even if it's not necessarily a big amount, but things happen during the month. You need to be able to account for those things. So I think it's very important that we're able to set boundaries, right? And we're gonna borrow a word from Tshepo, intentionality is very important. It's not gonna be easy, to tell your mom no. It's not gonna be easy to tell your sibling no. It's not gonna be easy to say no to people who genuinely need help. But I think the line needs to be drawn where we start asking ourselves, am I overextending myself? Am I helping the next person at the cost of me? And if it's at the cost of me, are the after effects of that decision something that I'm able to live through? And if the answer is no, then it gently becomes a sorry, I'm unable to. It genuinely just becomes a slowly, and it's practicing how to say no, how to say, unfortunately, with where I am financially, I'm unable to. So boundaries, boundaries, and honesty.
That is profound. Thank you very much. And some of us here, we are about to transitioning from academic life to the real world now. And it's a bit challenging, and I have a bit of fear, and how am I going to start outside there? So for Mr. Tshepo, I know you are expert on financial management. So what are the practical guidelines that you can offer to someone like me who have a bit of fear to transition from academic to the real world?
Yeah, just before I get into that, I think there's something Duduzile touched on that is just important. I just want to take a step back. The reason why these conversations around black tax are so difficult is that there's a power dynamic at home. You're having a conversation with somebody that's older than you that can easily say, but I raised you. I took care of you. I took you to high school. And now you're having to say no to that person, which makes it really, really difficult. But what I think needs to happen is, already in our households, we don't talk about money. There's a lot of money trauma. So the first conversation we have about money is black tax. That's very, very difficult on its own. So it's a conversation to say, this is how much I can give, and I can't go beyond this. But if you ask me for more, you are then putting my ability to graduate at jeopardy, which means I might never graduate and get a job. So it's either we're taking for the short term, where you guys are taking what you need, or we're saying, let's do it on a long term, and I give you what I can afford to give that doesn't compromise my ability to graduate. And maybe that's a little bit of a better conversation, but it's the power dynamics which I think adds to the complexity of trying to have that conversation. In terms of going into the world of work, it's exciting, there's a salary, but you've never seen a pay slip. There's things about credit scores. Now there's a credit card. It becomes so overwhelming. And once again, I think it comes down to being intentional. And intentional means you have a budget. And in your budget, it's stuff that Duduzile has spoken about. What are my needs? What are my priorities? What are the things that I want? And then the things that I want for my life need to be reflected in the way that I'm spending money. So if I say I want to buy my first car in X amount of time, am I saving towards that? If I'm saying I want to buy my first car, my first house, am I saving towards a deposit? Are those things reflected in the way that I'm spending my money? We need to make this thing very practical and very real. What do you want to achieve, and what do you need to do it? Simple as that. We don't need to complicate it and make it difficult and make it complex. What do you want to achieve, and is it reflected in the way that you're going to spend money? And a budget is a very simple way to guide that thing, because a budget is a living thing. It's a thing that can adapt to your life, right? And I think it shows your commitment to wanting to build a relationship with your money. But it's also that thing of just take a step back and breathe. You know, you've never seen the 15,000 or the 20,000 or the 25,000. Just take a second and breathe. And I think that's the best way to do it.
I just want to add something, and I'm laughing and I'm trying to sit right because it's a very interesting story. So my first job, I earned 8,000 rand. It was a lot of money, right? It was a lot of money. And this was like an internship. And I moved from the Val to Pretoria without taking into account the expenses that were tied and attached to moving. Heavily underestimated it. You need a bed, you need a fridge, you need all of these things. And I hadn't necessarily planned for them, right? And so just to add on what Tshepo was saying, it really, really becomes very important for us to really plan ahead. It really becomes very important for us to take into account literally every single detail, right, that goes into your first job, that goes into your first expenses, that goes into, you might be moving to a different city, to a different town, to a different area. It becomes very pivotal for us to be able to literally jot those things down. I think that's one thing that helps, because we constantly say, we use the term a lot, budget, 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 budget. But what does that look like? It's not fancy. It's not looking for a fancy template on Canva. It's literally writing down on a piece of paper or on your phone, since we digital these days, to say, 1, this is what I need, 2, this is what I need. Because within that 8,000 rand, my rent at the time costed me 4,650. I lived 30 minutes away from home. By the grace of God, my mom was able to get me my first car, but I still had to, commute, because a car doesn't move with water, I still needed food and all of those things, and I heavily underestimated all of that. So in situations like that, you should genuinely be very honest with yourself and very honest with your family. Because if I found myself in a situation where back home they needed something, how was I going to afford anything? How was I able to afford my living circumstance and home? So it becomes very important what Tshepo is saying, that have those intentional, honest conversations, not only with yourself, but also with your dependents or family.
Okay, very interesting. So far you gotta set boundaries. You have to be intentional with your money. So I'm gonna ask you a question. I noticed that you're studying, you're doing your master's, and you're also working. So most of us, I think, most of the scholars are doing that. Is either you're doing your internship, you're working with the university, and then you're also balancing that with your studies. I just wanted to ask, I know it's not like really money related, but then how do you balance that out?
Yeah, I think it has to do with your personality and how you handle things. I live a very structured life. So I know exactly at 2 p.m. where I'm supposed to be and what's going on. So when I wake up in the morning, I have a to-do list, and at the end of the day, this list must be complete. But I live a very structured life. But that's my personality, because I try and find a balance between work, school, and just being a human being and adulting. So for me, it's all about structure and process. But other people are a bit artsy-fartsy, and they sort of just go with the flow. I don't know, Duduzile, how do you do it? I'm very structured, so I've got a whole calendar, and I follow it to the T.
So for me, I used to wing it a lot. I used to wing it, to be quite honest. But structure helps, right? I'm very, very structured, but I think in a day, I have an idea of the list of things that I ought to have completed by the end of the day, right? The only things that I'm strict about with myself are my routines, like my morning and my evening routines. But as far as how my day goes, sometimes I'm a chance taker, but a chance taker within certain boundaries and structures. For instance, at work, if I know for a fact that there's certain tasks that need to be done, I'm like, okay, we prioritize. These are the things that need to be done today. These are the things that can be done tomorrow, right? And I only completed my master's, I think, in 2022. So also had to balance that with running a business. A schedule helps. A schedule helps, a schedule helps, a schedule helps. Because I know we don't necessarily like, confining ourselves to certain commitments, but it becomes important to relationship with yourself so well that you're able to keep yourself accountable to yourself and the commitments that you've made. So a schedule is something that's very important, to be able to know what needs to be done today, right? And outside what needs to be done today, what's important, what's urgent, how do I prioritize everything?
Can I just share a quick tip? I like what you said. I'm a morning person.
Yeah.
So my colleagues know that I start working at 3 in the morning. And I schedule my emails for 8. So it'll look like I'm sending the email at 8, but I actually work from 3. Because that's how I operate. That's how I work. That's how I'm productive. So an element of it is who are you and what works for you? And then how do you fit it into this busy world? And then my day ends a little bit early. So although I start at 3, my day will end at like 2 or like 1. I'm like, you know what? I've done all I needed to do. But I'm still accountable because I've done all the things that I'm supposed to do, which is an important thing that Duduzile says. You need to be accountable as well.
Okay, very interesting. You mentioned running a business. Very interesting, because I know the scholars have greatest ideas. Everybody wants to start something. So with regards to that, how did you come about saving, like capital-wise, networking and stuff like that? Sorry.
Okay, just to add up, because I know it's challenging, and as Pretty said, that we have ideas that we need them to come to the fulfillment. And some of us, we are like, oh my God, I don't know where am I going to get capital to start up. And okay, on top of that question that you can also, I can also add this one, like, so how did you come up with the capital? And is there any best investment outside there that we can also look at and see if we can raise capital to start our own companies?
Such an interesting question. So just a little background with it's called e-Assistant RSA. So what we do is that we provide virtual assistant to businesses and individuals in a nutshell. So this particular came up in COVID and came out of a need for an extra, a stream of income at the time, right? And so because I'm very administrative, it's something that I say, it's a gift God gave me and I didn't necessarily sign up for it. So I decided to harness it, and that's basically how it started off, right? And it really has been such a very interesting journey, because the conversation around the room was around AI, right? There are certain things AI related that you can't necessarily access for free, right? So it became a very interesting journey to find myself having to upgrade to platforms, to systems that I didn't necessarily could financially afford. But it was very important. I think Ms. Mam mentioned a very important word, networking, right? I'm someone who I genuinely take advantage of situations like this to know the people who are in the room, because you never know, right? You never know who the person you're sitting next to is. You never know where they could end up. You never know who they know. So I think during my years here, particularly at UP, I really harnessed a lot of relationships during my honors years. And those particular relationships were able to assist me and get me access to the people that had what I needed at the time. So it's really, really about harnessing the relationships that you have, right? It's about harnessing the relationships that you have, being able to put yourself out there as well, because we genuinely underestimate the power of community, right? Because you could realize that more often than not, a lot of businesses, especially during inception, are heavily focused on financial support, that they don't take into account the other additional support that a business actually needs to function, right, and get past the first 3 years of inception. So it becomes very important and pivotal for you to identify, what is my need, right? When I say I need capital, what exactly do I need capital for? Because a lot of people aren't able to answer that question. What exactly do I need capital for, right? If you say, I need capital to hire videographers, people that can be able to stream whatever it is that you're doing, are you not able to insource that from somebody in your network that can do it for free? But it kicks down the budget a bit, right? I need a venue for the launch, right? Do you really need capital for it, or can you harness that with someone who in the community is willing to give you a space for free? So it's all about those things, being able to qualify or quantify what exactly it is that you need capital for, and trying to understand, is this something that I really I can't harness within the community that I have? And then I think from having those conversations with yourself, and it's very important, guys, please have these conversations on paper. please have these conversations on paper, because we sometimes have everything up in here that we can't necessarily sort out through the mess to get to the final product before we start moving or implementing. So have everything on paper, have these discussions on paper, have sounding boards that you can be able to bounce off of ideas to, because one of my biggest impediments in life is I like doing a lot, right? And sometimes just because I can't do something doesn't mean I should do something. So having sounding boards have been able to help me sort of better structure and model my business to a point where now, if I disappear today, everything is going to remain automated. My clients won't necessarily struggle without me being there, right? So it's very important for you to be able to have those conversations, have those support systems. And last tip, I think, would genuinely be use LinkedIn. I know it sounds like a social media platform. I know it's very daunting, but LinkedIn is a very, very important tool that you can use to harness this community that you are trying to build as you're building up your business.
For Mr. Tshepo, do you have something to add on top?
Yeah, I think a lot of what she mentioned is you need to take initiative. Essentially, that's what it is. So you need to say, how do I unlock this door? And how do I move from where I am to where I need to be? So just like you've also got a startup as well. And how I got my first round of funding, which was very interesting, is I'd written a number of proposals to potential people to give me some funding. None of them responded. And then I went to a networking event where I knew most of the funders would be there. So I was there to bother them again for some money. And I was there, I had a copy of the actual proposal, physical copy. And I then met the head of One Life. And he said, give me an elevator pitch on this thing. But I thought to myself, had I not taken the initiative, one, to create this document, and two, to even come to this event, I wouldn't have unlocked the funding. And that's how I unlocked it. So a lot of what you said is taking initiative. LinkedIn, speaking to your network, connecting dots, it's all initiative, right? And I think that's the one thing that a lot of young entrepreneurs lack. It's that initiative. And it doesn't need to be bold and super creative. It just needs to be you going into the right spaces.
Okay, so I'm going to sway the conversation a bit, just one last time, to the idea of investments. I don't know much about them, so what I do is I basically just put money in my account, and that's saving for me. It doesn't grow, it doesn't do anything, it just sits there. Can you just a little bit tell us a bit about investment and what opportunities are out there, what can we do?
Yeah, we'll quickly just touch on the two. So you save with the intention to spend. Sounds really crazy, right? You save with the intention to spend. So when you save, it's for the short term. The intention is, I'm going to use this money for something. So you put it in a savings account, a 32-day notice. That is saving. You invest with the intention to earn. It is a long term. That means there's an element of risk, and you're putting this money into something so that it can grow. One of my favorite is investing in shares. I love buying shares. So you can invest in things like Mastercard, or Nike, or Capitec, or Woolies, where you essentially become a shareholder to this thing, right? And one of the powerful examples that I love to use is in 1st of March 2001, a bank launched. It's currently the biggest bank in South Africa, Capitec, 21 million customers. That was in 2001. When they had launched, they then listed, which means you can buy shares in the bank. And this was in 2002, September. And a share was R1.22. Right? Currently, a share is 2,700 Rand. They've got 840 branches. They've got 15,000 employees, 21 million customers. If you had invested 5,000 Rand when the bank had launched, you roughly have around 12 million Rand. And you don't even work for the bank. You might not even be a customer of the bank. But because you saw an opportunity to earn, you planted that seed. So that's the power of investing. And you can invest in different things, in gold, in Bitcoin, in crypto, in wine, in livestock, in whatever you're interested in. There's always a way to invest, and investing has become quite easy. So people had asked about easy equities. You've got 5 Rand, you can start buying shares. There's crypto. So it's just about thinking about, I want to make my money earn, and where do I put it? But of course, there's elements of risk and all of that. And on our platform, we talk a bit about that as well.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, we no longer have much time, so I'm just going to open the floor for a few questions from the audience.
So I have a question, but I will be taking the mic around. I don't know if I can go first. All right. So thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Josiah Muriuki, and I have two questions. One question is on black tax. We all had definitions, and we grow up in communities that are very unequal, and many times it comes out as I'm actually helping my people, because I would not sit to see, like one of the people in the BBC clip said, I cannot sit to see my sister not going to school, and yet I have money that can pay her school fees. And from what you said about boundaries, you said that you have to have boundaries, and in a way, it seems like I have to put myself first, and it can be seen as selfishness instead of the way, as scholars, we are always encouraged to give back, and charity begins from home, literally. On the question, second question is to Sir. You talked about saving and investment. We don't have money. To buy shares needs lots of money. I don't mean like extremely lots of money, but you need money to make money. But where do you start? Thank you. I can now pass the mic. Okay. So.
Okay. To answer you, right? Like I said, I think in the beginning that society just has a very interesting way of perverting a lot of the things that we know, right? Taking care of yourself will amount, in some people's perspective, as you being selfish, right? But I think highlighting boundaries is all about at what cost am I helping you, right? Because you can't say charity begins at home whilst you're still the charity. It won't make sense. It really won't make sense that you want to give back, but you also need people to give back to you as well, right? So it's all about coming from your overflow. Am my needs taken care of? And I think once you start seeing it like that, positioning it like that for yourself as well, and just consistently reinforcing it within your community, it becomes much more easier to say, I can help until this point. Beyond, I genuinely can't. And it's making it okay for ourselves to be that way. It's making it okay for you to realize that if I give you my money today, I won't be able to have food in the fridge, right? So it's all about just genuinely figuring out what works for you as a person and then moving from that point.
To the person who asked about, we don't have enough money to save and invest. Out of curiosity, do you have a budget?
My budget is my stipend to start with.
Okay.
And probably some few incomes from different things that I do.
Okay, but you don't have a budget, that means?
I do have a budget.
Do you follow the budget?
It's hard.
There we go. All right, so the reason I ask, I always find it interesting when people definitively say, I don't have money, but they don't have a budget. Because then how do you know how much money is coming in and going out? And for some reason, we find money for the things we think are a priority. If partying is a priority, you find the money, right? So saving and investing also has to be a priority. It has to be in your budget. It has to be in the way that you spend money on a daily basis. The other thing is there's this huge obsession that to start saving and investing, you need large sums of money. So you hear a financial advisor saying, save 15%. It's not possible. Let's just be honest. It's a difficult economy, right? So I always say, focus less on the amount and more of the habit. Because a lot of us don't have the habit to save and to invest. You start with the habit. 5 rand, 10 rand, 20 rand. Get into the habit of saving and investing. And then the budget. If it's a priority, it must be reflected where? In the budget. And you will find the money, I promise.
Sorry, mine is a question. You said something about using your LinkedIn to harness your community and network. I'm sorry, but I don't know, how do you do that? Because I come on LinkedIn and it's like every other person knows what to say, and I'm trying to figure out how to connect to the next person.
Thank you for your question. ChatGPT, you guys like ChatGPT. We all do, right? And so I think if you genuinely don't necessarily know what to say, use such tools to help you build up an introductory statement or note that you can pass on or share to the person that you're trying to connect to. You need to be able to know why you're connecting with someone, right? Because if you connect with someone and you don't necessarily know why you're trying to connect with someone, there's no conversation to be had. And if the conversation to be had is just, I looked at your profile, saw what you were doing, the things that you're interested in, are you open to a conversation just to hear about your journey? That could be a starting point. There absolutely doesn't need to be a whole 10-page question where you know what exactly you need to ask, but it's just about knowing the person behind the profile. And from having a conversation about their journey, because that's usually my starting point. Can I hear more about your journey? How you got or passed through the places that you've passed through, how you've been able to achieve the things that you've achieved. And from those conversations, then you are able to draw and extrapolate value and then take that and see what you can do with it. I hope that helps.
Hi everyone. So I recently was listening to a conversation that was taking place on Al Jazeera, and they were talking about how our current generation is the generation with financial dysmorphia. So, and I think a large part of what's influencing that is social media. And I think a lot of us want to go on those cute coffee dates, and we want to do like the lunch dates with the girls and whatnot. So how do we resist that temptation and prioritize, basically?
Yeah, for me, it all goes back to what is important to you, and is it reflected in the way that you spend money? It's a very simple one. I think we sometimes allow social media to put us under pressure unnecessarily. Because X and Y is doing this, I want to do the same. But the question is, what do you want to achieve, and how is it reflected in the way that you're spending money? We need to simplify this thing and not make it so difficult, and then not allow other people to influence us or to put pressure on ourselves where we now want to keep up with the Kumalos when we have no business keeping up with them, because it's not what is our priority. If your priority is to keep up, go ahead. But if your priority is different, then it must be reflected in the way that you spend your money and the way that you live your life as well.
Just to add on that, right? Within your budget, have an entertainment budget. Make space for entertainment and know that on a monthly basis, this is how much I have for lunch-ons, mimosas, whatever it is that you go and do with your friends, and say, this is the amount of money that I'm to spend maximum, but have it within your budget, because there's no point to make money and not enjoy it. There's really no point. So you really have to, again, what's important to you? Relationships are important to you. So because relationships are important to me, we need to be able to connect in some form or another. And then from that form, you then decide that I'm going to put it within my budget to say, at most, I am to spend whatever amount, and I can't go beyond that. And then in that, you get into the habit of knowing that these are my limits for entertainment. If groove is a priority, not that it should be, it's cold, but put it within your budget. Don't make it like an standalone item within your life, but it really boils down to the person that you are, what's important to you, what should be on my budget, and you should be able to make provisions for such things as entertainment.
Hi, my name is Kadambi, and I just want to throw my 2 cents on the conversation. I think when it comes to intentionality and financial intelligence, it all goes down to goals versus dreams. And I think everyone has dreams, even kids. But then what differentiates us and where we want to be is having goals and building onto them. And that is where things like budget comes in and all that.
Yeah, I agree. I think your financial goals boil down to what do you want to achieve, and is that reflected in the way that you're living? And your budget is obviously the viewpoint. But I agree, I think having those financial goals, what do I want to achieve, and how is it reflected in the way that I use my money, in the way that I save and I invest, the way that I budget, the way that I spend on expenses and so forth. So the financial goals is a big one, and it's the one that will guide a lot of your decisions.
Okay, unfortunately, we ran out of time. I am so sorry, Tuto. But I think what we can take from this is be intentional with your money. If you haven't started saving or investing, it's about time you start. And have fun while you're doing that. So thank you very much to our key speakers. This was very fun. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we don't. So can we give them a round of applause, please?